Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. It's so nice to see y'all. Thank you guys for joining. It's totally awesome. Yay. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Letting just a couple more people in. Happy Sunday. I'm so glad you guys are inspired to think about, moving into 1099. And honestly, years ago, I really, really wanted a better lifestyle. But I was a nurse at that point and I was W-2. And I got to tell you what, I was like, ooh, I think this is the wrong career. And it was weird because while I was in nursing school, I was super excited to be in nursing. I really enjoyed the people. I'm kind of a social butterfly. And then I was invited to join the 1099 float pool. And so once I became a 1099 registered nurse, I was like, super cool. I don't have to barter for my schedule. And, I started working at other places besides the hospital. And I really enjoyed getting out of the boundaries of the hospital. And then when I became an ICU nurse, I wanted to work in multiple critical care areas so that I could just like get the good feel for anesthesia school. And so I did that. And it was because I was 1099 that it was really easy to actually go between hospitals and like hit the neuro ICU, the cardiac ICU, just, the regular ICU. I swear I had impaction on my forehead every time, as a float RN. Anyway, I won't go there. But bottom line is, when I went into anesthesia school, the main thing is I wasn't going to do it until I knew that CRNAs could even be 1099. So I interviewed all these advanced practice nurses, and when CRNAs that I spoke with said that they could easily be 1099 compared to everybody else except an emergency room PA. And I really didn't want to be a PA. So that made the choice easy. Before you knew it, I was done with school. I had forgotten all about this 1099 thing. I was so focused, how anesthesia school does. I interviewed for a job, it sounded great, great money compared to registered nurse money. And, I found a good place to live in South Florida, moved my family down there and my best friend who we went to school together. And then the next thing that happened, I'm going to tell you about. So bear with me just for a second. Could you guys unmute? Can you guys see the slides? Can you see that little slide right
Yeah, we
there?
can see them.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, so this is a really pretty short lesson about moving from W-2 to 1099 and also about the numbers of how to make 1099 work in a life where you've only known W-2. And so it was because I went back to anesthesia, started working in anesthesia and as a W-2 employee that I recalled the reason I became 1099. And it was all about freedom. And so in 2020, I found out about Zoom and I decided to take my enthusiasm for being 1099 national. But, you know, the reason that I was even inspired to do so is because back in the day, when I first graduated, I became W-2 and I spoke with these really burned out CRNAs. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, and I was like stepping into their shoes. And I was really shocked that so many CRNAs were so disempowered, so oppressed. I had done some rotations at some CRNA only sites. I had also done ACT sites. So I did recognize that oppression and but it was only when I became a W-2 CRNA myself, I became very confused about am I taking direction from this person, this physician, or am I an employee? Am I doing it as an employee? Yes, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Or, it was very disempowering and confusing being W-2 because the role was not as defined as when I was in the CRNA only groups, where I understood, yeah, I'm empowered. I can do this. This is all me. I'm calling the shots. I'm comfortable with this. Getting more and more comfortable at that time. But going into this W-2 zone kind of blew my mind. It made me feel like a student. The people who I were around acted sort of very submissive, and they weren't taking initiative to do things their way. They were just doing the bare minimum. Whatever the doc said do, they were like, yes, and they were doing it. And then I noticed that the docs were kind of, seemed to me, taking advantage of them, like not giving breaks, scheduling everybody for holidays. And I didn't realize how short-staffed we were. And so everybody was complaining, but they'd been there 30 years, and they were like, honey, this is what you signed up for. But what really blew my mind is my husband said, Alesia, you were making more money as a registered nurse. And I started thinking about it. I said, oh, yeah, that's right. I was. I was, because I was a 1099 registered nurse. And so once I realized that being 1099 changed my income level, and then looking at the taxation on that W-2 pay stub, it came to me like a revelation. And immediately I knew what I needed to do. You know, everybody where I was working was acting like this was the only way it would go. Well, they had not actually had CRNAs, locums, or 1099 CRNAs come into that workplace. But then one day near the holidays, they did. And I met these people, and they skated in so happily. They talked about the various places that they were working. We were in South Florida. It's multidisciplinary surgery centers all over the place. Tons of work, tons of retirees, you know, a lot of great business down there for 1099ers. And then they waltzed out at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And, you know, I was like, that's right. This is just like when I was a 1099 registered nurse. And so I didn't want to waste any more of my time. I had spent a lifetime already being 1099. I knew how to set it up. I, you know, actually had a business entity in Georgia, but so I opened one in Florida. And the next thing you know, I became a 1099 CRNA. And it was a little nerve-wracking at first, because initially I was local locums. I just went to some different places to work in the area. And I had networked with some of the 1099 CRNAs, and I was like, yeah, cool, that's all fine. And, you know, so the first day was a little nauseating, and then the second day was great. And then, you know, and ultimately I did what I recommend to all 1099 CRNAs to do. And this is something that I teach in the 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass. And what I teach is that it's nice to work in like 2 or 3 workplaces, and make sure a couple of those are outpatient. And you'll find that in outpatient workplaces, there's a lot of variety. And one of the things I found that I loved is I could go swimming at lunchtime. You know, at one of these places, they had an hour for lunch no matter what. And there was an aquatic center around the corner. So I did that for like 10 years. And so, but it's important to balance your workplaces. So, you know, when you negotiate, it's really important to negotiate things like, okay, I'm available on Mondays, which is a high need day, right? Or I'm available on Fridays, high need day, but don't offer both of those. So these little tidbits that I'll give you as we go along, this is a drop in the bucket compared to what I've learned over the years and years of being 1099. Ever since the get-go, I had been a W-2 CRNA for 4 months when I went 1099. So honestly, had I recalled that that was the whole gig, I know I would never have gone W-2, but I did. And I'm glad I did, because now I could definitely see both sides of the coin. And so we all know that we can be courageous. And part of being courageous is stepping outside of our comfort zone. And so what I did was I taught CRNAs all over the areas where I worked to become 1099. I could not contain it. So in Florida, South Florida, Mid Florida, West Coast, East Coast. I worked all kind of places just to get a lot of experience and to learn different things and to see how different workplaces were. And then I came back to Georgia and started working Georgia and South Carolina. So I'd had my training in South Carolina. Never did go back to the big academic center there, MUSC, where I trained, but I did ultimately work in dental offices, where what I'm doing right now in South Carolina, which I absolutely adore doing. However, when COVID came around, I created the 1099 Success Academy. Nobody ever had talked about 1099 CRNAs before I learned about Zoom, and I realized I could teach this nationally. So I decided to bring my knowledge to all of you guys because I almost died in 2020 with sarcoma. Lost half of my blood and this very crazy surgery they had to do to remove this baseball sized sarcoma from my body that we didn't even know was there. And so anyway, that bad boy was gone. They lost vessels. It was a nightmare. Everybody was in there. It was at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And if any of you guys are from Memorial Sloan Kettering, thank you so much. I appreciate you saving my life. But after that, I said, I am making this course. I thought about it for years. I've taught it one-on-one. And the main thing with 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass is the people who come to enroll in that course. It is a 32 Class A credit course, Class A. And I just, by the way, I provide a discrete receipt. And I really want to get that in there because privacy is so important. I would not want a W-2 employer knowing that they are paying for 1099 CME. So I did get approval from the AANA, and part of the accreditation allows me to give a private, a CME worthy CRNA Financial Academy or CRNA Investment Academy receipt. And the business is American CE Seminars. That's how it looks on your transaction register. So as we go along, if you think this is something you'd like to do, then I'll tell you, and I will tell you more about the course as we go along. But the enrollees, they recognize they need to change. It's not easy to have a growth mindset, but when parts of W-2 isn't working for you, such as this scatter plot chart that I made in 2020, I took a poll. I spoke with 700 CRNAs online, on the phone, and I gave everybody a poll. And these are the things that were most important to W-2 CRNAs who said that this was just not working. And so I said, I totally get it. But you see the big schedule in the middle. And that is the truth. Part of why I love being 1099 is because I love to travel. And I was a live-aboard sailor for 22 years. Lived on a 50-foot sailboat and sailed all over the place in the Bahamas, in Florida, the Marquesas. And we just needed to be able to go when we wanted to go. And so because I was 1099, there were no real gaps in my resume. We would go sailing and then I would return to wherever my last port was and pick up wherever I left off. And so it made it very easy. That is continuous 1099 work. So that overcomes one of the problems that W-2 CRNAs have when they leave a position. It's hard because it leaves a gap in your resume, and this does not. So other enrollees really needed to overcome these self-limiting beliefs. And part of my program that is built into all 10 lectures that I give is using your mindset, using your breathing, using your lifestyle and thoughts of your family and vision boards, vision board creation, visions of where you want to be, the things you'd rather be doing so that you can be working less and doing these passion projects more. So many of my enrollees go on to open their own businesses in their passion project areas, and growing in that way. And they ultimately end up working. I mean, I love giving anesthesia, but if you've got a passion project and you love anesthesia, there's no reason not to do both. And the variety that you get from doing both is so fantastic. Work is plentiful. Obviously, there's millions of surgeries that happen every year, and there's never enough anesthesia coverage. So there's plenty of workplaces, and the key to the steady workplace mentality is credentialing. You have to be credentialed to work somewhere. So when you are credentialed in a workplace, they're counting on you to be there. They expect you to be there. So being 1099 does not mean some fly by night position. You can see yourself on the schedule. As soon as you complete your credentialing, the most common thing that occurs, and I've talked to hundreds of CRNAs that have made this transition, most common thing that occurs is that their employer, their 1099 employer says, look, I know we talked about Monday, but is there any way that you could do Wednesdays too? So-and-so is pregnant. So-and-so's parent is blah, blah, blah. So-and-so's kids, it's on and on and on. So it's not hard to get work, and especially in your own area. It's really not. A lot of people start flying away and they go to a locum gig. That's fine. But believe you me, you will have no problem getting work in your area. It's just learning where it is. This is the most overriding reason that people do take my course, okay? And that is this fear of change. Back when we were student CRNAs, we didn't have a fear of change because we just wanted to survive until we graduated, but we literally hopped from workplace to workplace all the time. We changed gears all the time. But once you become a W-2 employee, the employer will gaslight you, even if they don't intend to do it. And even the coworkers can do this. But what they do is they plant this feeling that, if you leave, it's going to be very uncomfortable. They'll never have you back. And all of that is not true. Okay. So think about the fact that you've been working somewhere as W-2, you've been there for a very long time. And at first it seemed great. Then now you're starting to feel exhausted, but you're comfortable. But the fact is you're not comfortable. You're unhappy. And the fact is that there's greater possibilities out there. And that is called the boiling frog effect, where eventually you just get so used to being in a workplace that you don't even know you're unhappy. But sometimes it's good to leave that. The good news is that job is always there. Even if they gaslight you and they say, you know what, you'll never be able to come back here. That's fine. Just keep it zipped, KMS, keep mouth shut. Nod, say, I appreciate it. I am keeping this door open. If this doesn't work out, I'll come back. And it's fine to say that. They don't need to know every true thought and feeling you have. That is just part of business. You just keep it on the down low. You move into your 1099 life. And, even if you're doing part-time, that is okay. And as eventually you complete this transition, you're gone. But if you ever wanted to go back, let me tell you what, they'll be like, please come on. So a lot of people feel like they're just not safe to do this kind of work, that, oh, it's expected, it's independent. Well, it is not. You're never, it's just like being in the unit, you're never really by yourself. When you are 1099, you've gotten to this point. I teach you in the course about networking. You get to where you've networked immediately. And so you always have someone to bounce ideas off of. But it's very common, this feeling of imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're just not enough. How could I ever be enough? And I'm scared. And all those are normal feelings. But the reality is you're enough. Think about these greats who had horrible imposter syndrome. Besides the fact that 90 something percent of the entire population of the world has imposter syndrome, most people think, I am just not qualified to do this. I cannot believe I am doing this. They actually are qualified to do that. It's just somebody somewhere in our past has planted these seeds. But the fact is, we are good enough. We are enough. What we know is enough. And the way you know that is when what hits the fan, you are pulling that patient back. You're steadily titrating. You're steadily making those moves to remedy the situation. you know? And because of that, eventually some doc comes rolling in the room and you're frustrated because you're like, why is this condescending individual here acting like they're adjusting stuff and they're really not doing anything? They, in a very condescending manner, want to hear the story of what happened. They discuss with the surgeon as if we're some underling, and we already fixed the problem. I mean, right? You know, you've seen it. So you know you can succeed. You know this imposter syndrome is a planted thing. And when you get out there and you become 1099, it becomes the new normal. So the third key to success is understanding that, 1099 life is not too complicated when you get some really good in-depth mentorship. And that is essentially what the 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass is. It's from the get-go, from the mindset and the understanding about feelings, about budgeting, about taking the leap, and the mechanisms that you can incorporate to get past that. And then next we talk about LLC setup, whether you're going to be an S corporation or not. What is reasonable compensation? Why is it that? The legal aspects of that, and so on and so forth, all the way to like your Secretary of State, what they expect. Are you going to need a registered agent or not? Just, are you going to work in more than one state? Is there going to be something called apportionment or not? Are you going to be taking a payroll or not? And then we get into the third unit, which is all about things like selling yourself, overcoming that imposter syndrome and learning how to negotiate, learning how to make those first few steps. And that is actually a very complex process, which is why it's so big. And understanding some of the parts of your value related to credentialing that nobody ever tells you. And then next we go into the budget setup, because the cash flow is so important. If you don't do your cash flow right as a 1099er, what happens? You have commingling, even if you didn't mean to. And at that point, you can owe money. You can go to jail. It needs to be done properly. And to be done properly, it's not waiting till after you see your CPA a year later. It's doing it ahead of time, before you step in, shortly after you step in. Heck, I've had people who have done anesthesia 10 to 30 years as a 1099er. They learned a ton from my course because I've dedicated my life to this mission. So then units 5, 6, those are about your value and how to negotiate and bring your rate up. So all of these concepts build together. 7 is about billing. 7 is also about payroll, running payroll, learning bookkeeping. 8 is about CPAs, what they expect, what we have to produce. 9 and 10 is about the different ways that you can really get deep down and figure out what your estimated taxes are, seeing where you're landing, see what are the tweaks that have to be done, and then to follow that up, you'll have mentorship from me. So that is what this 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass is about. What I haven't told you is, in addition, we have all the speakers you need to help get you from point A to point B. Health insurance, life, disability. These are taught by mentors. Malpractice insurance, 2 different agents, just on, financial advisors, CPAs. And all of these people you can talk to, you can ask questions, and then you can request my link and get on my calendar and we will meet. So, but let's just talk about W-2 versus 1099 real quick. You know how on the W-2 pay stub, it's your whatever you're taking home, there's not much left over, but 1099, you get a bunch of money and you're like, wait, what do I do with all this money? And how much are my taxes? But it's a lot more money in your pocket. And the fact is, how much more money is in your pocket? Well, I'm going to show you. So if you're a W-2, you're making $140 an hour-ish, and your pay is around $260,000, your tax rate is going to be above 30%. Above 30%. That's what I took home from my 4 months of being a W-2. I was like, oh no, this is not going to cut it. So doing the math. You got to understand this, okay? And this, I break all this down in the course. And this has, understanding this piece here will help you with negotiations. Things like taking locums contracts and negotiating your car and your daily stipend and all of these things. So it's in your malpractice and how all those numbers come together. I help you really put your figures together. So we got 260 work days a year. We CRNAs take 6 weeks vacation. So now you got 30 days off of that. 230 days worked. If you figure 8 hours a day, you've got 1,840 hours a year, no matter what. If you're working that kind of amount, whether you're 1099 or W-2. But in this bottom line here, if you worked as a 1099er and made the rock bottom amount that 1099ers are making right now, I mean, this is terrible money here, $180 an hour. But in some regions of the country, that maybe is what you're going to run into, but it isn't going to happen after you take the 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass, because I teach you how to negotiate for much better rates than that. But do you see how you've already gotten to $330,000 here? Okay, so, but look at this. The tax rate is 15 to 20%. Usually it can even be 14%, y'all. So, and then the fact is that as a 1099er, you have a further opportunity, and I teach you how to do this, is how to shrink your FICA. But where do you really belong? How do you shrink your FICA, right? Has to do with reasonable compensation. And you also have to figure out how much money you want to set aside and how much are you really going to set aside and be able to for your 401k. So I help you figure out all of that. But you can actually save up to $15,000 a year in FICA. That's a lot. That is in addition to these other tax savings that I'm telling you about. So here's an example using these numbers. And so we've got 330,000 minus $50,000 of business expenses. And typically they do run between $25,000 and $50,000. Business expenses are really what we're calling bills right now as a W-2, but I teach you how to turn those into your expenses in a legit way. So, and then as a S corporation, that's what this example is. This person is taking a $60,000 reasonable compensation. Why is that reasonable? Well, it is, and it is legal, and I teach you all about that. So you can determine where do you want your reasonable compensation, and it really, reasonable has more to do with the reason and you backing that up with the IRS, but I teach that. So the total business expense is 110. You take that away from 331, you get $221,000 for your net business income. The reason we're doing this is because you got to think about where the money is really being spent. Your money is going to be, each transaction is going to be categorized. That will go into bookkeeping. These will turn into reports that will allow you to move these numbers into these sections on your 1040 form. So now we're going to look at the 1040 form, and the above the line deductions are like half of your FICA you get to deduct, your HSA, health savings account, your health insurance. That's why it's not a terrible thing to have to pay for your own health insurance. You're going to get to deduct that, y'all. So your 401k for yourself, your employee amount, which is called your, oh gosh, I always forget this one. It's your I'm forgetting it. But anyway, the employer amount is the contribution. So one is like a deferment is what I'm trying to think of. You know how on your W-2 paycheck, they defer money, they hang on to it for you, and then they deliver it to your 401k? Well, you'll be doing this yourself, but how do you go about all the mechanisms that make that work? That is what I teach you in the 1099 CRNA Freedom Masterclass. You can employ your spouse, and I teach you the ins and outs of that. The main thing is you want to do this stuff correctly. So, but what we want to do is we want to shrink our business income. We want to shrink our net business income. And then we want to shrink our taxable income. And then we'll get taxed on whatever is the minimum taxable income we have left. So now we're on this 1040 form. We're taking away the $98,000 and above the line deductions. Now we're at the adjusted gross income, the AGI. I get into deep detail in this so you can understand it. And now we're at the below the line deductions. And you can see those, and to learn about those is another deep subject. But just understand that typically that would come out to be around $60,000. And so now we have the total deductions for your 1040 is $158,000. And so that is awesome. Look at that, $158,000 in deductions. When did you ever do that as W-2? You cannot. In some cases, you can if you've got a ton of real estate and that kind of thing. A lot of risky ventures. This isn't risky, y'all. This is just understanding how to do it, where to put the numbers, how to make it work out. So 221 minus 158, your taxable income is $63,000. And that's legal, okay? This is all legit. You're doing this by the books, okay? You're doing this intelligently. Do you see why I've had to teach people for years? I've been so excited about being 1099. I've had a great life. I've done a ton of traveling. I've had so much fun, you know, and I still am. But the fact is, it's because I'm understanding how to go about obtaining these deductions. Part of the obtaining of the deductions is networking and meeting the people who will be your mentors, your team, your bail committee, your banker, your accountant, your insurance agents, your lawyer. You know, do you really need a lawyer? No, I'm going to talk about that. I talk about that in the class. There's a lot of people who will take advantage of your deep pockets as a CRNA. My entire goal of this course is to keep your money in your pockets, give you the tools to DIY most of this or all of it, and keep your money. You do not have to give it away. There is a lot of smoke in the glass out there. That's the goal that I had when I woke up from my surgery after being told that my hemoglobin was 7. It had been 14 point something. So it hit me like I just knew. Now I have the opportunity. I'm going to spread the word about 1099 because it empowered me to feel like I'm not disempowered. I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm very cautious, but I'm telling you, it was the key to separating my mind from, oh, I'm confused. Am I somebody's employee and I'm following their lead, or am I being medically directed? And that's not right. So a lot of times it takes something like this to make the difference. And so that's why I'm here today. I'm here today to help you achieve just a few goals. And these are the goals that you're looking at right here. It's time for you to save the money and create your legacy. You can't really do that as much as a W-2. This allows you to focus on your growth. You know your weak areas, and it's easier just to step away from them. But as a 1099, you can actually step into situations where they need you and they are willing to train you. And I love that so very much. So all of this is true. 1099 CRNAs in most cases make 40% more than W-2 CRNAs. But y'all, I make $3,800 in an 8-hour period as a dental CRNA. So I'm just leaving you with that because if you do the math in a day, I'm not sure how much more that is. Is it 100 or 200 or 300% more than what a CRNA in a hospital setting would make? But it took me a minute to get here, but still, it's doable. And I have a lot of business expenses, you know, but they're actually things I would have paid for anyway, and that I'm willing to pay for. I do drive a little bit to get to my workplace. That's okay. That is a tax deduction. You know, I hire a CPA. Well, you know what? That's a tax deduction, but I've made sure that the amount is fair and that I'm not being taken advantage of. Like can happen so many times. Oh yeah, these guys, they're going to do your financial planning. They're going to do your taxes. No, this is a money grab for CRNAs. So be careful. You know, don't let anybody say, I'm going to teach you this bill of goods and then I will take care of you. That's not what we need. We can take care of ourselves. We can take care of others. We don't need to be taken care of. You can do math like better than most people, better than like what, 90 something percent of the population. Also, when it comes to moving into 1099, you feel like you could just do it on your own. I know we are that way, but you can get a huge shortcut when you have mentorship. And I'm telling you, you can achieve this in a record amount of time. People are always saying, yeah, I think like in about 6 months I'll be ready to do it. And then the next thing I know, like 6 weeks later, all these opportunities are falling in my lap and it's very competitive and I'm super excited and I'm just going to go for it. And I'm like, go for it. Just do it. So the best way to do it though is if you have a roadmap that somebody's already put together for you. And then you can do this 6 weeks to nirvana, you know? And why be stressed out? It isn't that much of an expense to learn what you need to know in an accelerated amount of time to do this all by yourself. And then you just don't have to worry. Why drag it out? Why stress out? I have many, many, many of these. If you guys go to 1099successacademy.com, you would not believe all of these reviews. And I am just so honored that CRNAs all over the country are leaving these. And this is just one of many. So hang on one second. Let me just click. Here we go.
Hi there, I'm Abby. I was a W-2 CRNA for about 8 years before transitioning to 1099 thanks to Alesia's CRNA Freedom Masterclass. As a W-2 CRNA, I was reaching a point of burnout. I was very much over my 24-hour calls and spending a lot of time away from my husband and my 2 young daughters. Last May is when I started the course, and within about a month of starting the course, I had already created my business and given my 90-day notice to my W-2 full-time job. So that was very empowering of the course right off the bat. And just a short 5 months later, I was in a new city working my first 1099 locums gig, and I had my husband and my kids with me. My career now is structured that I can work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and have a lot more time with everyone, which obviously is a big game changer for me and my personal happiness. Alesia is certainly the expert when it comes to 1099 anything. Her personal background and then all the knowledge she bestows through the class lectures really is the testimony of that. I think as CRNAs, we're all smart and savvy when it comes to making wise educational and financial investments, and I'm someone that can vouch for this course being just that. I think it's worth every penny, and you'll be able to make the transition from W-2 to 1099 in a much more succinct, easy, stress-free, confidence-building manner, and so it's very much worth it. Thanks again.
And thank you so much. Whoops, there we go. So just to let you know, that young lady ended up on her 2 weeks off. The family would return home. She had young children. And do you know she ended up finding local locums opportunities on her 2 weeks off so that when she got done with that first contract, she had work lined up and she was credentialed. So there's a lot of places you can go work where you're not credentialed. Plastic surgery centers, dental offices, some states podiatry centers. There's actually a lot of work that can be done outside of the credentialing realm. And those are jobs that aren't billing Medicare. But once you get into Medicare, like hospital situations, stuff like that, then yeah, you need 3 full months, sometimes 4 for credentialing. But I just wanted to put together some of the, savings you'll have plus some of the money you're going to make just within the first month of taking this course, okay? You're not going to need to pay anybody to set the business up. I teach how to do that. You don't need to contact a lawyer for every contract, although I do have a contract lawyer on as a mentor, and he does teach one of our courses. so that you can know how to read the contracts. Plus, Jan Menino, the CRNA that actually in the late 80s taught the Medicare system, CMS, that we do the equivalent work. We just have a different set of educational, background from an MDA. And so that is how we achieved parity in pay. So we are actually reimbursed from Medicare equally to a physician anesthesiologist. Did you know that? Yeah, so there's a lot to learn. And so, but from the money standpoint, bookkeepers literally are charging up to $600 a month now. You don't need that. I have created a course called QuickBooks for 1099 CRNAs taught by Megan Connor. And she's a CRNA who's got a passion for QuickBooks. And she joined me in my 1099 Success Academy. And so I teach the Freedom Masterclass. She teaches the QuickBooks. I produce discrete receipts for both of those. So, Masterclass, Freedom Masterclass is the um, uh, financial CRNA education, and the QuickBooks is the investments for CRNAs version. So, but anyway, you don't even have to buy the course. You can let your employer buy it. You get CME for it. And so that's a nice way to do it. But anyway, look at the money that you can save. You can save $20,000 in your first year alone. And that is incredible, isn't it? So the logistics are huge. This is really you can't count the money worth in saved logistics and peace of mind and knowing the people that you already need to talk to, having access to them from the course, the health insurance, life, disability, CPAs, financial advisors, and you can ask all the questions you need. You can ask me. If I don't know, I ask them. And that's why I developed these relationships with these people, because they can help you. And I put it together so it would be one stop shop for all of that. And so you don't have to, like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to wait and get a CPA first. I better go talk to a CPA. Actually, I recommend you do not get a CPA till you complete the course, because what you'll know, you're going to teach many CPAs. These days, there aren't enough CPAs out there, and there's a lot being cranked out right now. They've got lower requirements. And so as a result, they don't know all of this stuff that you're going to tell them, that they'll look up and they'll be like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. Help them grow. That's okay. They won't do anything they're not comfortable with. And everything that I teach is for real. It's grounded in legal docket information. So if you're ready to do all of these things, mainly control your own schedule and do it while you're maintaining your budget for your family and feeling happier when you go skipping across the threshold of your new workplaces because you've decided to work there. Nobody's putting you there. Nobody's telling you what to do. They're all like, thank you so much for showing up. We totally appreciate it. You know, so these are our vetted folks. I forgot a medical biller. We have her as well, because a lot of people do step right into like cataract surgery locations and that kind of thing right after taking this course. So nowadays, oops, I need to fix this slide. We're accredited for 32 Class A credits. The AANA has been accrediting this course since 2020. And so it's very competitive. Look online at some of the really great programs. What's great about this program is the platform is so much fun. It's a joy to actually explore and search through and go through the course. You'll get all kind of great PDFs and other information forms, a lot of media information on there. But it's totally doable, and it's more fun to do than any CME I've done. Okay, I'm for real. So, but that was important to me because I just wanted it to be enjoyable, easily accessible from your phone. There's an app you'll download to get to the course, and you can do the whole course from your phone. Closed captioning is there, or your computer is very good. And then you get mentorship for a year. when you join and then you enroll, then you'll have a year membership to the course. So that gives you plenty of time, answer all the questions. It's easy peasy. I did not make these tests so that they're difficult. You know, if you can say all of the above, I think you've passed the entire course already. So, when you add the 6 Class A CEs, it's actually, now that we're credentialed, accredited for 32 Class A's, the QuickBooks for 1099 CRNAs is now 38. You'll have a total of 38 Class A's. And this is what our discrete receipt looks like. And that's for the bundle package. You'll see there's no 1099 in the title. You can include an Amazon gift card option if you would like to actually, you know, turn this in and get $400 or $600 back as a gift card learning incentive. Just reach out to me if that's the option you want. I'll make sure you get that. So what's nice is it gives you a smooth transition. And I think for you, for your family, for your peace of mind, for your enjoyment along the way, for learning everything that would take you decades to learn, but learning it up front in a reasonable and fun format, that's really the best incentive. So normally this course would be one of those courses that are what they call these high ticket item courses. It's almost a done for you course, especially after you get together with me for mentorship to look at your individual situation. So it's really worth between $4,000 and $10,000 in that realm. But I see the empowerment that happens to CRNAs when they take my course. I hear from people all the time. A lot of people book with me literally just to thank me and say they would have never been able to do this without me and achieve the heights of income that they've achieved. So that's why, that's why I do it. So at this point, these are just some thought-provoking questions, If y'all could, in the chat, as you're seeing these, could y'all tell me what about W-2 isn't working for you? What isn't happening for you there? And I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat. And you can also unmute if you'd like to chat. But I can tell you what wasn't working for me was the schedule. And especially, guys, I was a live aboard sailor and I needed to not commit to one W-2 workplace. And after being W-2 as a nurse, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to cut it at all. It was a huge difference in lifestyle, like mind blowing. So, yep, the number one, oh, yeah, thank you, Annette. Looking for a schedule that gives you more time off. Exactly, right? I mean, sometimes when you want to get stuff done is not the time that they've arranged for you to be off. As a 1099er, you get to submit your schedule of availability. That is key. But the way you go about doing that is also key. And I cover that in my lectures. So a lot of people have a lot of fear. I know I've touched on a lot of those. But what is the one fear that you fear the most? What is the scariest thing about moving from W-2? And I have to say, I did it so long ago that I didn't really recall having any fears. Like I was young, naive, registered nurse going to 99. And I didn't, when I became a 1099er, I didn't have any fears except that maybe I wasn't good enough. I think I had that fear because I was a new graduate and I had been in academic centers, and so, yeah, that kind of worried me. But then once I started going, I was like, oh my gosh, I have tons of help. And even as a dental CRNA, I have tons of help. I educate the staff and I tell them what we need to do. We know if we had, everything's Girl Scout, worst case scenario, how long is it going to take an ambulance to get here? And let's get down and dirty. I'm like, is this ambu bag a problem? They're like, yeah. I'm like, no, this is a tool we use in anesthesia, So yeah, all of these things you're typing is so important. Yeah, the non-competes associated with W-2, I get a ton into that. That is very important. pediatrics. You know, there is a CRNA here in my town that does only pediatric dental work, you know, and she's done that for years and years and years. She said she was terrified when she first started doing that, but it didn't take but just a few weeks, and she was like, oh, I'm in the groove. You know, it's one nasal intubation after the other. Now, I do my dental on a natural airway, and every now and then an LMA is appropriate, but they have these incredible suction tubes that make it easy. But I get into that. Um, fear, yeah, fear of starting in a new place, you know, I mean, that's understandable. But sometimes, thank God the old place isn't going anywhere, right? Even if they tell you it is, you just say, look, I am going to be available to you. And you don't even have to tell them that. Just go, okay, I understand, but I'm going to try this, you know. But then 6 months later, around the holidays or summer vacation or graduation times or school starting times, you give them a call a couple of weeks ahead and you say, look, I know I'm still credentialed there. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing, but I would love to come and help you guys out. You know, I'm available. What can I do to help you? And you'll be shocked at how quick they're like, come on, come on. So don't push them initially when they say, well, you'll never get to work back here again, because that is gaslighting. They are planting fear. And once you recognize gaslighting, go ahead and do some research about it. It is shocking how often I was gaslit. Like when I initially left my W-2, the thing that the doc said to me is, I heard that they are hiring a all CRNA group and they're going to replace everybody they've got working there. And for a second, I believed him. Then I was like, this guy doesn't even have any idea where I'm going to work. What the heck is he talking about? You know? So, you know, burned by CPAs, that has happened to me in my distant past. That never happen again, right? And that's why learning this is monumentally important. That is a huge point. And the increased take-home income, that results in increased 401k. That results in college savings, vacations. You know, it's just fabulous. And oh, thank you for responding. Hi, Beth. Yep, you're CRNA. Mm-hmm. Yep, y'all were both W-2, and he's 1099, you're W-2. Great. That is a fabulous plan for you to transition. It's time for you to enjoy that happiness. It changes how you feel every day when you're 1099. I don't understand why it is such a lightness, but it really is. And then so many people have been W-2 for 20 and 30 years that took this course in the past that are now 1099, and so glad they did. Wish they'd done it before, but it's okay. We live our lived experience for a reason, and it's fine, you know? And for real, that's exactly why I break it down. I break down the business stuff so it isn't hard. Part of the course is you will be making a vision board, and then the top number one thing you want to learn about transitioning, I think a lot of y'all have said, the business stuff, dealing with CPA so you don't get burned, not being taken advantage of. And, you know, the availability of work. I'm just going to say if I did pediatrics, I would have endless amounts of work in a stone's throw of where I work, and I can name my number. So you are in a very, very good place. So when you take the course, you guys, once you enroll, reach out to me. I'll give you a link to my calendar. I've dedicated my life to this mission. I'm here for you guys. So, and it doesn't matter when that is, you know. Sometimes it's touchy when you're on the West Coast to get the times to match up with the East Coast, but usually that's when we have to go to a weekend day. So we can do that. So, and then we talked about some of this. Yep, yep. So that's why I put these here just to think about. The travel brochure is a very important part of this class. You can request one. Once you enroll, just send me an email. I'll send you the information, and you just fill out your trip information. You can get more than one brochure if you're going to a couple of different places. And then, you know, let me know which part of the course you want to do during that trip, and we'll make it legit. So it's fine. It's nice to have the inside scoop from a CRNA, right? I know. It really is. I mean, I love learning from other CRNAs. That's why Jake Bevilacqua teaches this course. He's a CRNA. His family has done life and disability for years. The other guy that is major on this course is Tony Habashi, and he does health insurance. And he was actually an anesthesia tech for years, not an assistant, but a tech, So he really enjoyed that. And then he ended up um, doing health insurance. So who files the Class A credits? We do. And we've talked about how the class can be paid for by your employer. And then if you renew annually, and it's amazing, a lot of people do want these legal updates that go on and also the market updates. So every year I update this course. And then when you've been in this course for, when you're crossing over into your next 4-year cycle, you just retake the test and we refile them. So it's free, but it's basically you're paying a fourth or less, or even an eighth of what you originally paid for the course. If you want to leave testimonials, if you want to do some social media posting, then, we negotiate and get your rate for renewal down so that you can just stay a part of the course. And then every 4-year cycle, get your Class A credits. And so that's another little sense of security. I also offer the course for office anesthesia masterclass, so you can get set up with your own dental office, bariatrics office, eye center, urology center, so many places out there, GI centers, critical access hospitals, unbelievable. And so I would really like you guys to think about going to the 1099successacademy.com and looking at some of these, whoops, bear with me. There's this little trick I'm trying to do here. I want you to look at some of these testimonials that people have left, because I tell everybody, just be honest. What did you get from the class? How did it change your life? Did it make any difference for you? And when you see these testimonials and you read some of them, it's just unbelievable. It's just phenomenal. And I'm so excited for it. Bear with me just a second. There's actually a special testimonial that I do want to share with you. So just bear with me here. This one is from recently, Lena.
Hi everyone, Lena, CRNA here. First of all, I'm so happy that I joined the course. I was kind of reluctant on it, but I went ahead and did it because I was full-time W-2 and wanted to be 1099 and kind of just didn't know the specifics of how to do that with taxes and just all the logistics of it. So I'm so glad that I did the course. It kind of took a lot of the guesswork out of it. And it was just really helpful overall. So I would definitely recommend the course 100%. And if you're thinking about doing it, just go ahead and do it.
So that's why I did this, y'all. I did this to make your life better. And I did this because I almost didn't have the opportunity to do that. So now this is what I do. I mean, I give dental anesthesia and I mentor. And I update my course and I add more content, and then I create new content for you. And my goal is to make your life easier, help you get together with me so that we can figure out what are your estimated taxes going to be? What's it look like? Are you married filing jointly? Are you not? Is your spouse making more than you, less than you? Are you single filing? Are you, there's all the different choices. There's a lot that goes into it. Do you have real estate? Do you not? There's just so much to think of. So when you're ready, come on and enroll. And I'm here for you. And I appreciate you joining me. Thank you guys for joining. And I'm willing to take questions. So if y'all would like, I'm here for you. And if you want to send me any questions, you're going to get an email from me tomorrow. So I'm totally honored. I am sending you guys a special so that, if you're on the fence, maybe, you'll go ahead and do the best thing for yourself and your family. So it's really great to see you guys. Thank y'all for joining me. I appreciate it. And check your email tomorrow. Wonderful.